welcome to the Animal Training Academy Making Ripples podcast show, the show where we share the stories of the ripple-making extraordinaires with behavior nerd superpowers who make up the Animal Training Academy membership. I'm your host and one of the happiness engineers at Animal Training Academy, Shelly Wood from Drop Your Jaws Dog Training in Cape Girardeau, Missouri in the United States. We're absolutely thrilled and grateful to have you here with us today. Make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss a single episode. This show is brought to you on behalf of the Animal Training Academy membership. So if you like the conversations in these episodes, then we want to invite you to continue them with like-minded people in the ATA membership, which you can find out more about at www.atamember.com. Within the membership, you can get access to twice monthly live web classes, the back catalog of previous web class replays, plus a huge library of videos and projects to help you problem solve your training challenges. And we're a sociable bunch with an exclusive private Facebook group and forums area. It's like a Netflix social media platform for animal behavior geeks. Today we are excited to welcome Alamelu Sankaranarayanan to the show. Alamelu is a Karen Pryor Academy certified training partner based in the San Francisco Bay Area, where she lives with her husband, their 6-year-old golden retriever, Monty, and a spirited domestic short-hair cat, Roma. Murphy, her first golden retriever, though no longer with her, remains an integral part of who she is. When she was pursuing her PhD in computer engineering, Alamelu imagined her life would revolve around building more efficient microchips or teaching. Instead, serendipity had other plans. Through a remarkable chain of lucky encounters, she found herself drawn deep into the world of animal training, a world she is profoundly grateful to have landed in. She completed her KPA-CTP in October of 2025 and is a graduate of the Living and Learning with Animals course, an experience she credits with helping her understand and articulate her own ethics more clearly, lead with kindness, communicate with clarity, and build a partnership where cooperation can truly flourish. She has been an active member of a local dog training club where she has served on the board, assisted trainers, taught group classes in life skills and sport foundations, and helped set up a positive reinforcement program for dog sports. Her tech background has also found a home in the dog sports world. She developed the Canine Rally app, a mobile resource for AKC rally competitors. Alamelu is also a passionate photographer and videographer, loves traveling and hiking with her dogs. She is currently setting up her training business and labor of love, Woof School, through which she hopes to enrich the lives of more dogs and their humans. Welcome, Alamelu. I'm super excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Shelly. I'm happy to be here too.
Well, thank you for joining me. I look forward to hearing all that you have to share with me and our audience today. And I would love it if you would get us started by talking just a little bit about how you got started working with animals and some of the work that you're doing today.
Well, my story is more about discovery and not about going down a paved path. So unlike most people who grew up with dogs, I grew up in India and I did not grow up with dogs or animals in my family. But dogs were everywhere around me, the street dogs, and there were packs of them and they were coexisting with all the chaos around us. But the cultural message was that, it was really clear. It was stay away and be afraid because they're a pack and they're animals. And for a while, I was, afraid, and I would just watch them from a distance. But I remember this incident really distinctly, where I found myself between a pack of dogs in the afternoon, and I didn't know what to do. I froze, and they were all looking at me, and I was looking at them, and suddenly one of them wagged their tail, and the others wagged, and they just disappeared after that. So, I think in that moment, even my fear diffused and I became more and more curious about them. So I started having secret names for the dogs, that only my sister was privy to. And I started sharing tidbits from my lunchbox with them to see what they would do. So I had some kind of a relationship with the animals, but I never had an animal growing up. when I finished school, I was really interested in getting a puppy. So I begged and pleaded my mom and dad, and we ended up getting a small black Labrador puppy. But, we were not ready for it. We didn't know what it entailed. We've never had dogs before. I got busy with my life, and my mom was taking care of it, and she was not ready for it. So after 3 weeks, we had to send the puppy home, and there were a lot of tears, there was a lot of heartbreak, but my mom sat and explained why it was the right thing to do. I had to make sure that um, you know, the dog had a fair chance at life. It had an enriching life too. Um, so the puppy went home, but that day I decided that the day I get independent and the day, I smell freedom, I'm getting a dog of my own. And fast forward many years down, I was working in India for a couple years, and then I came to the US. I was enrolled for doing my master's and then my PhD. And the day I set my thesis defense date, I reached out to a breeder that I had sort of selected, and I told her I'm ready for a pup. So, right about when I was wrapping up my PhD, I got home my first golden retriever, Murphy, from the breeder. And, when she sent me home, actually, no, before that, when she was, interviewing me about the puppy, she told me to read up on training books. And I was really interested about training because, it looked so fun when people were able to get their dogs to do things. But the book she suggested to me was The Monks of New Ski. And I did not know anything about, positive training or, all the force-based protocols. So I bought the book, I read it, and I could not sleep the whole night because I was like, I'm not doing this to my puppy. I didn't know anything about it, but it just didn't seem right to me. And I knew I should have thought a little more about it, but I didn't think about it. I was just thinking, let the puppy come home and I'll figure out what I needed to do. And, as luck would have it, I met a neighbor after many years who I told, I'm getting a puppy. And she said, you know what, there's a really good dog training class close by. And you should just, sign up for it and go for it. And it ended up being a class that followed Ian Dunbar's program. I didn't know who Ian Dunbar was, but I was extremely lucky that I landed there because, they were the original, they said, did a lot of things using positive reinforcement. And my trainer was wonderful. I also ended up at a Fear Free Vet thanks to my sister. And one of the first posters she gave me was a Lily Chin poster for Sophia Yin. And it said, she gave me a checklist by Sophia Yin that listed all the things that I should socialize my dog, with. And she also gave me this poster about reading like dog body language or something. And it was Lily Chin. And I was so excited that, it was such a beautiful way to explain things because, it was all good drawings. And I went home and I looked up Lily Chin and Sophia Yin. And that's how I got the first puppy book that I bought for myself, which was 7 Steps to a Perfect Puppy or something like 7 Days to a Perfect Puppy by Sophia Yin. And I loved everything about it. I just soaked it up. My class was great, and Murphy was as perfect as you can get. I mean, not because of my training; it was just the way he was. So I tasted a lot of success with him. He was such a good dog. Everyone said, "Oh, you must be doing all the right things with him," but it really was just him. But he got me hooked into it. I started doing things with him. We were going through all the classes, and I just kept wanting to do more and more. But once like hit the puppy classes, the next thing that's there for you to do is dog sport. And I ended up getting some DVDs by some competitors to see what they're doing, but I did not like what I saw on the videos. Like they were using like slip collars and they were like maybe like pinching the ear and things that I did not want to do with Murphy. Um, and I found Fancy Dog Sports Academy online. They were relatively new too, and I was also new, so I uh, I devoured the content that FDSA was putting out. I met some really amazing trainers, and I just kept wanting to do more and more. And I started seeing if there were other people who were, in FDSA and close by, and that's how I found like one dog training club close to me that happened to have 3 people who were working really hard to set up a full positive reinforcement based program there. So I was very lucky that because of all these chance encounters with my neighbor and going to one class and finding fancy dog sports, I always was I never had to cross over. I only learned like gentle humane relatively humane techniques. And of course, there's always room to improve. So I was doing a lot of things for my dog club. I was on the board. I helped with their website, and I enjoyed training a lot with Murphy. Um, and then I think I landed up at Clicker Expo, and that was it. Like I'm sure like a lot of people say they go to Clicker Expo and it's a really life changing experience, and that's what happened to me too. I found like my internal compass had found north. I just wanted to be there. I wanted to hear. I remember the first time I heard Dr. Susan Friedman speak. And then I heard Sarah Owings, like, work with her dog. And I was so blown away and fascinated. The real reason why I went to Clicker Expo was actually because I am a Hannah Brannigan fangirl, and I knew she was going to be speaking there too. So I really wanted to go there and hear all of them speak. And, at that point, I had decided that this is something I want to get really deep into. And I always feel grateful when people tell stories of how they crossed over from, the other side. I feel lucky that I chanced there. And, I always feel like whenever I can, I should and people ask me for information, I should point them in the right direction. And I started doing more. I started, assisting the trainers in my club. I started teaching, not puppy classes, but classes for adolescents. And then I started doing foundation dog sports over there. So I enjoyed the whole ride, and I didn't want to teach a whole lot without getting certified, which is why I signed up to become a KPA-CTP, and finally here I am. So I have a background in tech, and this was supposed to be after my PhD, I wanted to take a break for a few months before I started working, but I don't think I ever went back because I just didn't find it as satisfying as training dogs. It sounds crazy, but I really did not. And I loved the people I was meeting. I loved what I was doing with my dog. And, I always dreamed that maybe there's some way in which I can marry tech with, what I'm doing. So maybe not directly, but I try to help out wherever I can. Those are my skills. And yeah, I'm still going down the rabbit hole. I've not found the ground, or I've not surfaced up yet. So, stay tuned.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Alamelu. What you've got such an interesting story, and from your time in India with the street dogs to the way that you ended up finding your way in animal training today. And you were just talking about thinking about how you could maybe marry your tech background with your animal training background. And in your bio, did you say that you had created an app for Rally? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Of course. So, one of the people in my club is B. Moore, who is, she's been involved with the sport of rally ever since the inception. And that was the first dog sport that I, attempted with Murphy. It's beautiful because there are some relatively simple skills that you need, and it's a nice gateway to enter into the ring. So I noticed that people had these handbooks, paper handbooks that they would carry to all these trials, and they were busy flipping through it and worrying about finding descriptions for the signs. So I don't know if you know about rally, but essentially what it is there's a course with many cones, and on each cone or each stop there is a sign that tells you to perform a certain behavior. So you get points, or rather you lose points if you don't do exactly as the behavior is defined. So if the dog should sit in heel position, what does heel mean, how long should it sit, and so on. So there are rules for each sign. And I just made a little app, because everyone has their phone there, right? So I just made an app where they could just search those signs and look up details, and they don't have to worry about carrying the books and so on. So it was a very small thing, but I kept it free, and I made sure that people had access to it. I think it's not available on the Play Store anymore because I have to update some things, but I may do that. But I think what happened was, because once the app got really popular, people started seeing the value. There were a lot of other people who developed apps too, and there are some really good resources that people have if they look for such apps. I think that there are also people who write apps where you can train your dogs. And I didn't do any of those things because I was not, certified, and I didn't want to take on that. And it's hard to, just give generic instructions on an app. But yeah, that was a good phase. I think a lot of people found value with it. They found it helpful, and it was interesting to do that. One of my goals, like I said earlier, is to make sure that more people are they know what's out there. Like, a lot of people are like me, they want to find out what more you can do with your dog, and they don't know. It sounds like a big thing when they want to do dog sports. So just having the app, I had people email me and tell me, I never knew about the sport. I was just looking for apps to train my dog, and I found it, and I discovered rally. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds like a really fun way to marry those two skills, your dog training and your tech skills, and a nice way to create a lot of ripples. And speaking of ripples, I loved hearing you list all of those people off, from Ian Dunbar to Lily Chen to Sophia Yen and to Hannah Brannigan, one of my favorites for sure. So loved hearing you list all of those people off who have created ripples in your life. And it's super cool that you were able to make those connections on early in your journey and made it into positive reinforcement training right from the beginning.
Absolutely. I'm very grateful for that.
And I love, early in my training journey, I also went to a clicker expo, and I would never have thought to articulate it in this way, but it absolutely felt like my internal compass had found true north. I loved it when you said that. That was a great way to say that. So how many expos have you been to since that one, Any?
None. I attended, that was the pandemic, right? So 2020, it's so funny when I think about it. Just before the pandemic broke out, we were at Clicker Expo in Portland. Or no, maybe Seattle, south of Seattle. And then I attended one more expo live. I did not go in person. I couldn't go the last year, but I will be. I hope, they're coming back to the West Coast again next year, so maybe I'll be going to that Clicker Expo.
Well, that will be really exciting. I'm happy for you. I hope you'll be able to get to go. So also, I wondered if you would tell us, also in your bio, you mentioned you're currently setting up your training business, Woof School. So could you tell us a little bit more about Woof School?
Well, it's really new. So, I just want to, it's basically just, I'm going to offer dog training, and I'm hoping to like do, I love working with adolescents. So I want to do something where I can, help dogs that have finished their puppy training and they want to do something a little more advanced skills. I want to offer classes that help people like venture into dog sports. Like, I really enjoy training foundation skills and foundation behaviors. So I probably want to do something of that. I also am thinking of maybe some more tools that I can develop with my tech background to sort of help people stay on track, with their training. These are some early thoughts. And that's about it. Like, I was teaching at my local dog training club, but we recently lost our facilities, so I'm not teaching or offering group classes anymore. And in general, the climate now is a little tough, so I don't see a lot of people asking for classes. But yeah, I'm going to stay there, keep sharpening my tools, and stay on top of it and see how that goes.
Well, I look forward to hearing how everything evolves and how you continue to support people and their dogs in fun and unique ways.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Could you share with us now about a training related challenge that you've experienced, how you worked through it, and some things you learned from it?
So I think the training challenge that I've learned from many training challenges because I was a complete noob, right? But there is one particular experience that is recent that I think really helped me understand some key topics, or rather pay attention to some key topics, and remind me that I need to, be a student in this field for a little longer. So the challenge was to create a chain of 10 behaviors. And this was part of my assessment for the certification. So the requirement was that you need to have 10 behaviors that are on cue, and you need to execute them one after the other without using like an obvious reinforcer like food or toys or anything. Um, and basically, it I couldn't just backchain the behaviors because I had to show that the behaviors were on on stimulus control. So I should be able to, you know, it should look like the behaviors were discrete and they were not just rolling from one to the other without any control. Um, I was fairly confident. I had picked behaviors that, Monty had been doing for a while. There were a couple of new behaviors. There was some where I changed the cue. But I went through the whole process of like getting them fluent and, trying all the little recommended steps, like building short chains, increasing the length slowly, trying to generalize them, work through distractions and proof. Um, what happened was just before my assessment, I felt really sick and I could not train with Monty for the 2 weeks before my assessment. I was not sure if I was going to even attend the exam, but I tried, giving him the cue, a couple of cues and a few short chains the day before, and he seemed to do just fine. So I thought, okay, I might as well attempt and see what happens. Um, so on the day of the assessment, I started by engaging with Monty and like playing, and he was really on. He was playing with me. I did not sense any kind of disconnection. He wanted to work with me. And I started giving him the cues, and I noticed like a slight latency in the behavior. And then after like the third and fourth behavior, I started seeing big pauses. And then at one point, he just stopped, looked at me, and stared. So you have 20 minutes to demonstrate, just 10 behaviors. So it's pretty generous. So I tried like, letting him, sort of, maybe there was a warm up, maybe there was a one off mistake. So I warmed him up. I tried the behaviors a couple more times, and he was doing them just fine. But the behavior kept deteriorating, and I just could not execute the chain completely. I was really dejected, and I thought, okay, I have one more chance. So the next day we started the day again. On the first day, I worked for the whole 20 minutes because I was like, no, I know I can do it. I know he has it. I just kept pushing through it. On the second day, I saw the similar behavior. He was pausing, he was breaking, and it was not like he was disconnected or distracted or but he just would come and pause. He would just stare at me. I gave up much sooner mentally, even though I was like trying to work for 20 minutes. I did not have any expectation of finishing the chain, and I gave up. So I knew that I had to fix something. And normally when you have a bad training session, we've been taught to like video ourselves so that you can go back and look and try to debug what happened. But because it was an assessment, I did not have the luxury of videoing myself. So I was completely in the dark. Had to rely on my memory, and I had to figure out what exactly went wrong. I also had to deal with the mental flagellation you sort of, subject yourself to when you fail. Um, well, fail is a very harsh word, but when you're not able to do something that you feel, fairly confident that you could do. And everyone was super nice to me, and they told me maybe it was your nerves, maybe he read off your nervous energy, and all those feedback, they felt good. And in that instant, like I felt like, yeah, they're probably right. Maybe I was nervous, but deep down, I knew that that didn't explain it for me. What does it mean? And how would I prevent that from happening the next time? Because it's normal for a person to get anxious, when they're being tested or something. Is it really my anxiety that will cause him to like do really fluent behaviors and come and stop? But it was just painful. And, I'd sort of drifted into like a fixed mindset saying that I don't know what I needed to do. I just need to like, something went wrong. Monty was just being, I don't know, defiant, or he was, I don't know, something. I started putting all sorts of labels that really don't help with the problem. So I had to take a break from, working on this because I just did not feel like training him, because I felt like, oh my God, something happened. He was just not, into it, and I might have poisoned the cues or whatever. It just so happened that, before the assessment, I had, heard of a chance to work with Terry Ryan and attend one of her chicken camps. So that camp came at the right time, because when I was right down in the dumps, I had got a chance to attend chicken camp. Um, And that did a couple of things for me. First of all, it changed the context completely. I was not working with a dog anymore. I was working with chicken, a new learner. I knew nothing about chicken. I never grew up with chicken, and I had to be a complete student with that creature. I had to know what it meant, why it did something, and I got a chance to be a full learner again, a complete basic learner with Teddy. And I think that was really enjoyable for me because I it sort of reminded why I am doing this. It is a puzzle that we are constantly solving, and that sort of broke the spell of dejection and demotivation for me. um, so I went back and I still did not feel like looking at those 10 behaviors or working on them. But I started working on things that I enjoy with Monty. I started doing tricks with him and all the different things just to get the mojo back and to be in flow with him so that we can work. And, I saw an advert for Mary Hunter's course, Q Repair. So I thought, oh, but that's exactly what I need, right? Like, I need to figure out there's something wrong with my cues. I need to fix my cues and repair them. And she spoke about poison cues, and I was wondering if my cues got poisoned in some way, which is why he didn't find them reinforcing. And I had to understand exactly what was going on, so I was in learner mode, being a sponge and trying to get all the input that I could get. So the big takeaway from that particular course for me was to think of the cue as the green light. And it is telling it's not, it just doesn't cause behavior. It just says that there is reinforcement available and you need to you could do this to earn reinforcement. And everything is on cue, including the wrong behaviors that you see. So it really the instinct to do the instinct is to blame the animal when they do something unexpected, like maybe he disconnected or something. But I think Mary helped me reframe it and said something like, something cute, that behavior, what exactly changed, why did he pause, is there something that you did? The other really wonderful experience that I had was that there was a panel talk in on ATA actually, and the name of the panel was "Uncover the Hidden Cues Sabotaging Your Training." Again, that was like something that sounded really relevant to me. So that was with Mary Hunter, Sarah Owings, Josephine Lindstrom, and Peggy Hogan, and they sort of reinforced all the same ideas, and they got me thinking really hard about whether I was ambiguous at any point, whether, what I could do so that the animal doesn't feel confused and what I should be paying attention to. Um, I think one other important thing from that particular talk was that, when you're doing a chain and when you think of doing behaviors, when you cue your dog, it's not just you cueing your dog is cueing you to do something too, right? So it's like a constant dance between the handler and the dog, and you need to not just look at your dog but also at what you are doing, because you might be cueing your dog to do something. So that was a really a valuable insight and reminder for me that I need to pay attention to what I was doing too. um, so and I also remember there was this really interesting thing that happened in that discussion. Peggy was talking about an experience where she had to build a chain with her animal. I believe it was a horse. So she sort of had the same sort of experience where the horse knew all the behaviors, and 3 weeks before her performance, the horse stopped doing the behaviors completely. It was doing all the wrong things. It was like behaving uncharacteristically, and she called Ken Ramirez for help. And Ken told her what you could do is probably, separate out all the behaviors in time and in space. So get out of the environment, because something in the environment is cueing a certain behavior. So just get out of the environment and, like check all your behaviors and then bring them back together. So that's exactly what I did with Monty as well. I took all of those, I poured into old training videos. And while I think I did a good job of generalizing, there were still a couple of things that I missed. Sometimes it was in the definition of the behavior. For example, when you say spin, if you ask me, I would say my dog completes one circle, right? But actually, it was my dog completes one circle and faces me. So it does not mean one complete circle the whole time. He would rotate until he saw my face, the front of me, and then he would stop. And I thought because he was able to do it in heel, on my left and my right side, me being in front of him was not part of the picture. That was true if he was in those positions, but everywhere else in front of me, he wanted to complete the circle and face me. So there were some times where there was an unexpected cue that was happening. So one of the behaviors in my chain was I had a whistle in my mouth and I would whistle and then he had to sit. So I was very careful about him not pairing sitting when I had the whistle in my mouth. But what I didn't pay attention to was what happened when I dropped the whistle. So after I tooted the whistle, I noticed that if the whistle, I just spat the whistle out, he would stand. And if I kept the whistle in my mouth for just a brief bit longer, he would wait until I asked him for the next behavior. So, there were little things like that. And I had to look more at myself and not at Monty to sort of discover what was it that I was cueing him. So we did that exercise and, I started feeling better about having this constant dialogue between him and me rather than me giving him cues one after the other. And 3 weeks later, I scheduled the assessment, and everything went to plan. I was super grateful. So I think this whole experience really, taught me that there is so much nuance to cues, adding cues, identifying cues. There's so much value in looking at a video. I know it's extremely painful, but like looking at yourself on the video is just as important as looking at your animal. And finally, it made me feel a lot better because, one of the sports I want to do with Monty is musical freestyle, which is all about building chains. So I think this was a very good lesson for me. And, I feel good about going and making chains now.
Thank you for sharing all of that. And I don't know if I have seen it all or in part, but I have had the opportunity to see part of your chain in action, and it is just
That's right.
beautiful.
No.
Really,
Thank you.
really lovely work. So congratulations on completing your KPA CTP and completing your chain. And I can imagine, I think, I can't remember what words you used. I think maybe dejected was a word that you used earlier. And I can imagine feeling that way as well if I had been in your shoes. But it does sound like this ended up being a really wonderful and valuable learning experience for you.
It did, absolutely. I think there was such a sense of relief, but I think more than that, it sort of told me, what kind of mindset I need to be in when I feel stuck in training. And that happens, a fair lot. It can catch you unexpected. It can catch you, when you go into a ring and your animal is not behaving the way you expect it to, after you do your hard work, of course. So yeah, I think it was probably my favorite experience of the KPA was actually not succeeding the first time and debugging it.
And when you first started sharing about the experience and you were like trying to figure out what was going on initially, I can't remember the label you used, but you used some sort of label about Monty. Maybe he's just being obstinate or
Obstinate, right? Or
yeah.
like he was just like, throwing a tantrum. You say such use like not things that are not useful.
Yeah. And then for you too, it sounds like other people were doing that with you. Well, maybe it's because you're anxious, and I think that's something that I hear a lot is you hear people talk about a lot how our moods impact our dogs. And I know that some people who struggle with their mood sometimes feel they don't feel great about that because they worry that their mood is impacting their dog. And what I heard you end up saying is, it wasn't focusing on whether you were anxious or not, but it was objectively pulling all of those things apart and looking at everything, your body movements, your environment, looking at all of that separately. And who knows, maybe quote unquote anxious had something to do with it, but what even is that?
Yeah, and my mentor actually, Kiki Yablon was my mentor for the course, and she made some observations. She was saying when you get nervous, I do a lot of baby talk, and I think I start, tapping my fingers on my face subconsciously when I get anxious. So yeah, I'm sure like there are some behaviors that he has keyed in, and every time I'm anxious, I do it, and he does something to address it or to respond to my cue.
Sure. And I guess that kind of what I'm trying to think through and get to is that the things that you're identifying right now, maybe sometimes I tap my face, or maybe sometimes I do this or I do that. Those are things that we can change and control and figure out how to work through, whereas quote unquote anxious may not be something that's so easy to work through in a systematic way.
Right, right. To be fair, I don't know if I was not anxious and he didn't read it, right? So I also did a couple of other things to make sure that. Let me like go back a step. So what people told me is when you get anxious, you start smelling different because you sweat, or you yeah, like that's some theory. I don't know if it's true, but I heard all those things come out from from different people. Or maybe your breath smells different or something, like the dogs know when you're anxious. And you know I know it's true, right? Because there are dogs who can detect moods. I think Monty can detect when I'm getting upset. Like when I think about Murphy for too long and I get a little weepy, he's right by my side, so he knows. But again, I think like listening to Mary say that cues make dogs do some things. And if you don't want it to be a part of the cue, you need to generalize it. So there was also some training that I did, which is I would train with like mint in my mouth, or I would eat different smelly foods and then train him. Then I used perfume. I trained him at different times of the day, just in case he was using like some kind of odor as a cue to do something. I just wanted him to know that it didn't matter at all how I smelled, or how I looked, or I did anything. So I don't know what helped, but definitely like looking at it more objectively and thinking of any behavior that the dog did, even if they were not responding, um, as a response to something that you did, as a response to a cue, is helpful. Sarah says something really interesting. She says that you know how a dog responds to ambiguity is different. Like sometimes if the default behavior is too strong, if they might just offer a default behavior when they get ambiguous cues. And one of the default behaviors that Monty has is just a stand. He just stands. So maybe there was something ambiguous, and that's why he stood instead, because he was actually doing a default stand as a response to an ambiguity that he saw. So we don't know for sure, but I think it just helps to think about all those things and move past it.
For sure. And something else that you mentioned that really stood out to me in that whole process, and I think that you were just talking about it a minute ago, was something that I think that maybe Mary Hunter had said, but I could be wrong about that. But you had said that everything is on cue, even the quote unquote kind of wrong behavior. And
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those aha moments, and those, I often joke that there are some things that people say that I want tattooed on my wrist so that I never forget them. This certainly belongs on that list.
I can see why it is a really powerful thing to think about, for sure, that everything, even when we're seeing behavior that we don't like, we're like, why are you doing that? Like, it's on cue. There is something that is cueing that behavior always. So, yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And I wonder if you would share with us now about a training situation that you are proud of and or that you found reinforcing.
Yeah, again, plenty, because you do these things with your dogs, and sometimes you get such thrills. There are lots of training incidents like that, even the smallest things. But I think the thing that makes me most proud about is some recent success I've had with husbandry training with Monty. I think like a behavioral goal is far more complex than other kinds of training disciplines like obedience or agility or something, where you have a really clear goal. But when it's cooperative care, you have to track multiple things at once, and you have to see how if your animal is relaxed. You're constantly changing criteria on the fly. You're negotiating the entire environment, and eventually when you want to use it at a vet's office, there are other variables that you can't necessarily control. So it's a very complex problem, which is why I think even like advanced trainers pay so much attention and devote so much time to it, right? um, so I think when Murphy, my older dog, was a puppy, I was using a clipper to clip his nails. And when he was a puppy, I picked him. And there was a lot of blood, and it really traumatized me. So I would never went back to the clipper again. I think, it'll make me nervous and I would make mistakes. So I had to use a Dremel with Murphy. And it's a little sad that, my first book was from Sophia Yin. And I was, like she was probably the first person from whom I heard about cooperative care and husbandry training, right? But Murphy was so pliable and biddable that I didn't have to do it. I would just hold his paws and Dremel it, and he would take it and be like, okay, that's pretty good. The Dremel is not hurting him. But of course, after going to all these expos and talking to people, you sort of know that it's not common. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be extremely systematic with Monty when he was a puppy. So I went through the process of desensitization and counter conditioning extremely carefully. So what I mean by that is like I always paired it with food. I was very slow. I introduced the Dremel's side and then I turned it on and then I got it closer to him and then it, ground something. So I was very systematic with him. And all the time there was like a lot of, a lot of food. Either it was my husband shoving food down his throat or there was like a treat and train that was like dispensing food. And he was letting me do it. He was a puppy, right? So I was dremeling his nails, but I think I missed a little nuance over there that what what Monty had learned was I will tolerate the Dremel if there was a very high food availability. And the food was actually doing a lot of the work, so I had not desensitized him. It was just really distracting him. So, when you go down that path, eventually at some point your dog says, no, I'm done and I don't want you to Dremel my nails anymore. And Monty started withdrawing. He would pull his paws away when I would Dremel. And I thought that's okay. I'm really close. I made the cardinal sin of saying, no, it's okay. You'll get over it. Right. So I continued to insist and said, he'll just get used to it and he'll be fine. So I pushed through that. And unfortunately, what I saw was that the avoidance behaviors really magnified. He started like cowering when he would see the Dremel. And if I turned it on, he would run to another room. And that was really hard for me to see. I really did not want him to be that way. And nail care is unfortunately one of those no choice things. You have to have nail care, right? Because it's important for their welfare, especially with all the things that we do. So I had to make sure that he felt okay doing it. So the first thing I did was, I heard Eva Bertelsen talk about creating like a no choice contingency and making it super clear. So the first thing I did was I made sure that, he knew exactly when it was a no choice contingency. And I would say something and have a very clear cue that I'm going to hold him and do his nails. Of course, I also did it very rarely, in the sense like I told myself it's okay if I hear his nails, it's okay if his nails look big, but I have to build up the husbandry skills. And when I do have to have a no choice event, I'll be very clear about saying that this is a no choice event. So that was one of the first things I did. I explained that to him. And then I had a vision. So what I envisioned for Monty was that, when he sees the Dremel, he's laying on his side for an extended period of time, and I Dremel his paws, and then I ask him to switch, and then I do the other paws, and then I'm able to do all four paws. So that's the vision I had. But instead of like just starting the whole process in, together, what I did was I broke the process down and built on just the skills without the Dremel in the picture. So I taught him to go down on his side on cue. I taught him to switch to the other side on cue. I added duration to that behavior. I taught him to offer a paw, any paw. So he has good foot targeting skills. So I can ask him to, give any of his feet and he will give it to me in my hand. So I asked him to do all of those things. And I, sort of did a picture where he was just lying down. I would grab his paws and I would, flip him over to the other side, ask him to get flipped to the other side and then ask him to give me the other paws. So I did all of that on cue and it was like a trick. It was not husbandry at all. And then very slowly, I started bringing the Dremel into the picture. But the promise to him was if at any time he said no, I would stop, no matter what. This was not a no choice event. So if he said no, I would stop. And occasionally it used to be really, really short. I mean, I didn't just bring the Dremel in. I had to do some counter conditioning and desensitization at that point too, just to make sure that I do it. And then I had to develop my observation skills and make sure that I did not take him to the point where he was saying no. I was just dremeling him the slightest amount without, him backing away. So when I did that, the what it looked like was he would come on the mat and I would barely touch the Dremel with his nails, and I would get off so that he was not saying no, and he started tolerating the Dremel. He was not running away from the Dremel anymore. And then in during the KPA, coaching, like Kiki, I've been following her on social media for a while, and I really liked something that she did, which was she would sort of indicate to the dog before she was able to do something. So she sort of had a cue for it. So she would touch the dog's paw to let them know that, she was going to do something. And then she would bring the Dremel out and assess and see if they were uh, okay with it, and then go ahead and do it. And that, got me into the whole assent versus consent, discussion. I started reading up about that, and I definitely thought that that was the way to go for Monty. So I started asking for yeses to even counter condition or starting the whole procedure. So instead of just um, you know getting him on the mat on a down and then having my treat pouches and then getting the Dremel and just honoring the no, I decided to ask for a yes and honor the no. So what that meant was I set up a towel, and that was supposed to be my yes or my start button for the whole training. So if he came and he sat or he laid down on the towel, then that means he's willing to go ahead. And then I would touch his paw, and if he didn't balk, then I would go ahead, and so on. So I started asking him questions at every step. And it sounds like it's super painful, right? Because I'm asking him for every step. But what I started seeing is when I started asking for a yes, I started getting really big yeses very quickly. So the process then changed from ask for a yes, ask for a yes before each movement, and honor the no's. So I started doing that, and very slow, very quickly, I would say like in a week or so, I was able to, you know, maybe Dremel his whole paw and then ask for a yes again before I did the next paw. So it just, came down to, okay, the towel, do you say yes to the procedure? And then I'm going to ask you if I can do your paw. And do you say yes to a whole paw? So the yeses also became bigger. And it's been going really well. And right now, I don't hide my Dremel or anything. It's a clear cue. He knows exactly what's happening when that specific towel comes out. So if I put the towel on the floor, no matter where he is, and he hears the Dremel or whatever, he just comes running and he's like, "I'm ready for it." So I get really big yeses, and that makes me super happy and proud because I know what a difficult task it is for him. So I don't think he likes the Dremel. Of course, he doesn't. But I think I'm really proud of the fact that he is willing to tolerate something that may be a little aversive to him just because he trusts me, label of trusting me, I guess. He engages with me. So I'm really proud about that.
I can see why you would be really proud about that. I would as well. Those behaviors that we have to have to help our animals have optimal welfare, like cooperative care, husbandry type behaviors, are just so important. And so it's lovely when we're able to teach our animals to trust us. And trust looks like those big yeses that you were talking about. So it's wonderful when we're able to teach that and have that kind of relationship. And when you were talking and you said, you were talking about asking for the yeses and honoring the nos, and you were talking about that process kind of in detail of how he's gonna come to the towel, and then you're gonna touch the paw, and then he's gonna do this or that. It reminded me of something you were saying earlier when you were talking about cueing, and you were talking about how cueing is this constant
Exactly.
back
Dialogue.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that those concepts bleed everywhere, and the more I train my dogs, I realize that they come down to these little maxims. And I think that the concept of a dialogue is so crucial and important for us as positive reinforcement based trainers. And, yeah, it's been really eye opening for me.
And I think thinking about like trust too, and how we might, what trust might really look like, and that it is kind of this willingness to come and participate in this process, at least in this case,
Right.
And I think about how you get that trust. And I think that we get trust by listening, asking for yeses, honoring
Mm-hmm.
nos, and it's given that
Given.
way back as
Right.
well. So really, really cool stuff. So thank you for sharing about all of that. I'm kind of curious. I really also like that you talked about the no choice contingency for when you actually had to do the nails. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I hear come up more on this podcast with guests, sometimes talking about having to develop no choice contingencies for certain behaviors. And I hear it coming up more in ATA sometimes, and I'm glad that I hear it talked about more, because it is really important when we have to get things done that we have a way to do that, and we know that it might not always be the way that not the goal way, maybe, but it's the way
Right.
that it
Right.
has to happen right now. So I wonder if you would talk just a little bit about that. Like, I'm curious about, like, did you Dremel or clip nails for no choice? Did you or someone else do no choice? How did you make it different from the choice contingency?
That's a great question. So I have a sliding door by my in one of my rooms that leads to the backyard. So for my no choice contingency, the first thing I did was I changed the environment completely. So I don't usually hover around that door, but I usually start by taking him there to, because it's a place that he has a huge reinforcement history for, for getting there, because that's how he gets to the backyard. So he goes there easily, and then I don't use the clipper because I am, I have not figured out how to use it. Yeah, so I still do use the Dremel. I tell him, no choice, I'm sorry. That's my cue. I just a random phrase I came up with. And then I move into a space and I hold him and I just like lift his paw and I do it. So again, there were some component behaviors that, I sort of worked on. I know how to get him there reliably. I don't drag him there. If he says absolutely not, then maybe I just try it in a little while, or I use a food lure, and he does get there is always a cookie at the end of it. Um, the treat and train is also like a cue of the no choice contingency in that respect. I think when he sees the Dremel and the treat and train, I think I might have probably poisoned the treat and train in that respect, because I used it when he was a puppy, where he was feeding, and it was pretty much, like no choice, right? I thought I was doing something, but, I was doing something else. So the treat and train is a cue for him. But I think the big change is, him getting on that brown mat in that specific spot where I say, no choice, I'm sorry. And I just hold his paw and I do it. But I will say that I am very careful about doing it. So, in the sense, like, I don't do it each week. I had to make peace with the fact that I have to train these component behaviors. Husbandry is high up on the list. So, I spent all of my training time doing husbandry and not any of the other tricks or anything, because I wanted him there. And I would keep it super brief. I didn't care about getting a nice round. I would just do a little bit, no choice, and that's it. We would end it. So that even the no choice, even though it was like forcible, it wasn't as aversive. So I was careful about that with Monty. I think with another dog, maybe I could probably do a little bit more even in the no choice contingency. But Monty is really sensitive, so I have to be careful about what I ask of him when he doesn't have a choice.
Thank you for sharing a little bit more about that as well. Wonderful. And is that, unfortunately, our audience won't be able to see it, but that's Monty back there resting very comfortably
Yes,
right behind you, isn't it?
that's right. He has this habit of, sleeping right by my chair, and my chair rolls. So I always worry about, like, hitting him with a chair when I try to get up or something. So I have this huge mat that he likes. It's not a mat, it's a blanket that he likes to sleep on. And my point, eventually, I want to make it smaller and smaller and a little further away so that he stays on the mat. But
Yeah.
he's doing a good job.
It looks like he's found himself a nice, comfortable, sunny spot there.
Yeah,
Well, Alamelu, thank you so much for everything that you have shared with us so far today.
this was fun.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun for me too. So, and I'm sure our audience has enjoyed listening to you and learning from you today as well. And speaking of that, if somebody is listening and they wanted to get in touch with you, find out more about what you're doing, how would they find you?
Well, they could email me. My email address is alamelu, my first name, @woof.school. Um, and you could also find me on Facebook. There are not many people with my name. It's a pretty uncommon name even in India, and you could find me there. I'm the girl with the golden, so uh, you can feel free to reach out if I can help in any way.
And then that email, alamelu@woofschool, is that like woofschool.com or anything?
No, it's woof.school. So the school is a domain. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you. All right. And we'll make sure to put that in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alamelu, from myself, on behalf of the audience, on behalf of ATA. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
Oh, of course. I hope I didn't ramble on too much, but if it can help someone out there, I'll be really happy about this.
We do, of course, appreciate all of you tuning in as well. And if you have enjoyed this episode and are interested in carrying on the conversation about working with the animals in our lives in the most positive, most fun, and most choice-rich ways, then as mentioned at the start of this episode, the Animal Training Academy community is waiting for you. Head on over to www.atamember.com and click on the membership button in the main menu to learn more about what members are describing as the Netflix social media platform for behavior geeks. That's it for this episode, though. Thank you so much for listening. You'll hear from us again soon.